Welcome to the Upside Podcast, powered by Upside Global and hosted by Julian Blinn, founder and CEO of Upside Global. The Upside Podcast is listened to weekly by over 6,000 sports and tech executives from all sports leagues and teams in the United States and around the world. Julian has been developing technologies for professional sports teams for over 10 years and has worked for major tech companies along with sports tech startups. In each episode, Julian interviews global leaders in sports to share knowledge on emerging technology in the sports industry and how these technologies can help improve the performance of individuals and organizations, both on and off the playing field. And now here's your host, Julian Blinn.
So today we have the honor of interviewing a group of NHL practitioners. So guys, I'll make some quick introductions around the table. So first we have Alexi Pianosi, the head strength and conditioning coach for the Colorado Avalanche and NHL Team. So welcome back, Alexi.
Thanks for having me, Julian.
No problem. It's great to have you back. And then we have Devan McConnell, the high performance directors for the Utah Mammoth and NHL Team. So welcome back as well, Devan.
Thank you. Great to be back.
It's great to have you back. And then we have Chris Stackpole, the VP of Athlete Care for the New Jersey Devils and NHL Team. So welcome back, Chris, as well.
Thanks, Julian.
It's great. Hey, guys, I'm going to jump right into the questions. So first question is about human intuitions and technology. So as technology rapidly accelerates, what performance or rehab decisions today is still made largely by intuition or experience? And what would you want technology to solve or objectify in the next 3 to 5 years? Anybody has any thoughts on what's really still relying on intuition and a human element today?
I'll start, I guess. I think the end stage of return to play still has quite a bit of intuition, especially when performance and medical sort of begins the transition back to the skill coach or the coaching staff and into practice. I think there's probably still and I don't know that it's necessarily a bad thing, but there's still quite a bit of coach and practitioner intuition involved in those things, along with good data analysis and collection. But I think that that's still an area where there's quite a bit of coach's eye, so to speak, that's involved.
When the performance practitioner assess the player, they can get a feel for what's really going on in the rehabilitation, you mean?
Yeah, and just as that player nears full return to play, there's still, I think, some objective decision making that goes on with between the player, the coach, the performance staff, medical staff. I think there's still a layer of that.
Makes sense. Well, thank you, Devan. Anybody else? Alexi, Chris, or Adam?
Yeah, I think one of the things that I've always leaned on a little bit, especially in the return to play process, is some kind of subjective measurement of movement quality. You watch an athlete do a particular drill or a particular set of drills, and you look at angle at the ankle or the knee or the hip and try to make sure are they moving as efficiently as they possibly can? Are they producing and absorbing force proportionally throughout the sort of the kinetic chain? And if you're not able to figure that out, sometimes you can lean on technology, but and then when you're adding technology, it's force plates plus motion capture plus muscle EMG. It's a lot of moving parts to kind of get some of those answers. And for a lot of coaches, I think especially the more experienced one, it's just their coach's eye that they've trained over hundreds or thousands of reps. So trying to bridge the gap between what is good movement quality, especially in this world or a sport where everybody moves a little bit differently. They have their own movement signatures, and that's okay. But as long as it's not leading to an overloading of particular tissue or a particular area, then it's probably acceptable. But bridging the gap between understanding, what is quality movement and what is efficient movement, and then, being able to quantify or objectify that a little bit more, I think is probably could be the next frontier sort of for the technology side.
Interesting. Yeah. I mean, I know we've gone a long way as far as computer vision, but maybe there's still some meditation or something else, you can do better, right, with technology. So, Chris or Adam, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I would say the on the technical side would be interesting from a skill development. So whether it's technically skating or stick and puck technical development, I feel like there could be something that we could do similar to baseball when it comes to all the mechanics of pitching. Granted, not the same idea, but there's so much that's done in the biomechanics labs of these, hockey product companies that we don't have access to at the team level. It would be interesting to potentially tap into some of that to look at how do we actually help some of our younger players who are developing create better access to skill sets they already have that we're just not tapping into. Especially when we're training or playing so many games, we have opportunities to potentially do more skill-based work individually. When guys are going from game to game every other day, there's opportunity potentially to do more low-intensity things or work on fine-tuning things in season that could lend itself the opportunity.
No, that makes sense. And Adam, do you want me to repeat the question? That was the first question. So.
Yeah. Hey guys, good to see you. Been a while for a few of you, so sorry for coming in late there. No need to repeat the question, Julian. I'll just kind of, if it matches my answer, great. If it doesn't, we'll just move on to the next one. But I agree with these three guys. I think I'll piggyback a little bit of what Devan was saying about this objective or subjective nature. And the one thing I've always wanted technology to do, and we'll keep on the theme of like return to play, is we have all these different measurement stuff. Catapult measures hundreds of different metrics on the ice, and for me, technology, I've always wanted to ask the question of what am I missing? What am I missing? And whether that's with these AI chatbots that are coming through and everything, of saying like how did that skate differ from this guy's yesterday's skate, and run these hundreds of metrics through your process and tell me something's different. And then I can always, as the practitioner, have conversations as the performance side with the medical professionals, say, oh, this was different, how do we feel about that? And then you can really use your professional knowledge to evaluate if those were good or not. But I've always wanted technology just to tell me what I'm missing, or what don't I know. Like, it needs to fill that gap. So I think a lot of companies now are starting to add those AI chatbots, and maybe that's where it's going to go over the next few years.
And do you think that maybe your company is something that they could take on and try to resolve that problems, or Sportslogiq?
Well, I mean, everybody wants to do it. Yeah. I was on a call yesterday with a technology company that they've put it in from a scouting perspective. And so, teams or hockey professionals can put in a player they're looking at, for example, and it'll run through the last 10 years of scouting reports and bring up player comparables and strengths and stuff like that. Like, really interesting, like, scouting pieces, but I don't think that's hit the performance market yet. Like, that hasn't hit, like, for me, or like, I'll take Devan, for example, if Utah could, run their data from last night and say, okay, here's all the on ice data, was the outcome expected? Was it, from a team perspective, from a player perspective, he could put his travel, schedule in and say, what are the odds that we're supposed to win this game? I know some teams are doing stuff like that, but no one's doing it on a whole scale level yet.
Yeah, that's a good point. Well, hey, guys, the next question I want to ask you is, what are the important metrics? And what I mean by that is, we have so much data these days, right? So what metrics do you guys think, do you wish you had that does not exist yet, but would change how teams monitor readiness and performance, right? Readiness is a big, it's one I see a lot of teams they want to understand the readiness of the players, right? But what are the metrics that don't exist yet, but you guys would love to measure at some point, if you were able to?
I think for me, being able to measure cognitive load, cognitive clarity, something along those lines, I think would be kind of the next area that I'd be curious to learn more about, or to have access to. We have a lot of ways to measure CNS readiness and fatigue, and metabolic readiness and fatigue, and things like that. But from a mental perspective, a cognitive sort of load perspective, I think that's the type of thing that I would be interested in diving into.
But I think that that's a good point. There are some companies who claim to measure do a cognitive assessment. One comes to mind is like Skill Court, but they're using a combination of metrics like reaction times and they're using, can even use like force plates, but it's almost like highly subjective, right? Cognitive assessment, right? So anybody else, Alexi or Chris or Adam, have any thoughts?
Kind of piggyback off of Devan there too, and just I think I don't even know how you would measure it, but like Devan said, we have a lot of ways to measure CNS readiness, but how does that interact with motivation, or for lack of a better term, emotional well-being? When you get to the rink and you're motivated to do your workout, to watch a video, to practice, you've seen players, some players on the back-to-back, they go into overtime the night before. It's they're probably physically exhausted. They have every marker of readiness down, but they play amazing. You know what I mean? There's some interaction there of the psychological or the motivation or the focus and attention that's interacting with the CNS, and how those two sort of combine to create the outcome. Again, I'm speaking very hypothetically here because I'm not even sure how you would design those constructs, but how the two of them interact to then get a more holistic view of readiness, almost like redefining the term of readiness to encompass that or incorporate that would be very interesting to me, I think.
Maybe measuring like mental fatigue. How would you even measure mental fatigue?
Yeah, I feel like then you're, at the essence of finding a holistic metric means you're bringing in more factors, more things, and the more things you bring in, the more complicated the question gets, the more complicated the solution probably needs to be. And then it's, at a certain point, it's just too taxing to do or not possible, or, that doesn't work in the environment of pro sports with the time you have with players and stuff like that. So maybe this idea will never come to fruition, but it would be interesting to see how kind of all of those things interact within a player's life to then create the readiness at 7 p.m. on game night kind of thing.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you, Alexi. Chris or Adam, any thoughts on the types of metrics you guys would love to measure doesn't exist?
I would say more on the team dynamic side, it'd be interesting from a team chemistry perspective. So to be able to look at the teams that perform well with potentially undervalued rosters or under respected rosters, like how do you harness the roster design, decision making that goes into that, and then all the physiological components that complement that. It'd be interesting to have something that could almost help build teams more scientifically, or understand the nuance that goes into when picking a player. How does not just the technical, tactical stuff factor in, but all the other character and emotional regulation abilities and leadership abilities? Like, that would be fascinating to understand from a team performance perspective.
Yeah, and then Chris, on that, I think I talked to Adam about this. There's a company, maybe you guys know them, but AIQ, right? Their kind of claim to fame is that they can match you with some of your guys with matches and players, but I don't know how they actually do that, right? But it's around like talent acquisition, matching, but again, the studies have to be there and you have to be able to back it up, right?
I think that goes to the kind of what Alexi and I are thinking too, is it's all about that. I think Chris had, used the word emotional regulation and cognitive clarity and all of these non-physical attributes that play into whatever we want to call readiness, the ability to perform, like Alexi said, on a, back-to-back with bad travel and, upset stomach, and somehow the player still goes out there and performs well. Like measuring what that is, figuring out what that is, if that's even possible.
Well, I was talking to an NBA team one day and they said, look, we've got this quick 5 minutes test. We know if the guys are ready to go. They won't tell me how, but it's like they claim to have this kind of magic, formula, whatever it is, right? But I haven't seen it yet. So
my answer kind of piggybacks off that, Julian. I would actually probably push back on that team and say, well, I'm sure that means they're the only team in the history of professional sports that have figured it out, because everyone's trying that. Everyone's trying to figure that out. Yeah. Companies are throwing millions of dollars at trying to figure that out. And to me, like, that's the yellow brick road of any kind of tech company where they want to go. It's what every practitioner wants, is when a coach comes in and says, how are our guys doing today? You can 100% with confidence tell them, physical, mental, cognitive, whatever fatigue it is, that's what we're all searching for. We only have proxy measures now.
Yeah.
And we say with confidence in our voice how we're feeling to these coaches and stuff. But it'd be really interesting if those guys haven't figured out, because they're sitting on an absolute gold mine to monetize. Because I know there's at least 3 teams on here that would buy into it. So
Yeah.
the example I always give is the NFL. Now, the NFL has billions of dollars, and if NFL teams haven't figured it out yet, then I'm pretty sure we're all chasing the same goal that way.
Yeah, and they wouldn't tell me, like when I asked them, well, what is this test that tell you if you guys are ready to go? They wouldn't tell me. So, and they might be listening to this podcast, but I don't know. When people tell me those things,
hey, hopefully they do, and they can reach out to all 4 of us and tell us what those tests are, practitioner to practitioner.
Yep, I'd like to know too. The next question is about the return to play, right? So, what part of the return to play process do you think will look completely different 5-10 years from now? Maybe we'll have the ability to measure, like you said, do a cognitive assessment effectively, right? Because you only measure the motor skills when the guy is coming back from an injury. So what do you think the return to play process will look like 5 to 10 years from now? What do you hope to see?
I think the one thing that's starting to come down the chain, I think a little bit more, is sort of biomechanics or 3D emotion analysis kind of thing. And it's a little bit more difficult in a hockey rink than, maybe on a small basketball court or a small pad where you're, a baseball hitter or pitcher, something like that easily stays in focus. But I think most non-contact injuries, come down to excessive amount of force going through a particular tissue that exceeds its capacity. So, okay, if you can watch a live, feedback of the way a player skates or pivots or stops or starts, and get direct feedback in almost real time on, where that force is going, and then make actionable coaching cues and in the process, I think that'll help a little bit. But again, now we're talking about a lot of moving parts to potentially, impact one small part of the rehab process. But I do think people seem to be pouring a lot of time and energy into doing that. And I think that'll probably be not to say that's going to solve everything and make RTP so much easier, 5 years from now. But I think that'll be that role in the process will probably be larger in 5 years than it is now, I would say.
Yeah, great point. Thank you, Alexi. Anybody else? Devan, Chris, Adam?
I mean, I think I agree with Alexi. I think that's an area, that sort of live biomechanics area is really difficult to do in our sport so far. It hasn't been done well to my knowledge, but I think that there's potential for that to be really beneficial if somebody can really sort of harness that and figure out how to do that. So that some of the things that they're able to do in baseball, and again, because the constraints are very different, but being able to really sort of zero in on pitchers, arm action and spin rate and all of these different things is pretty fascinating. So if it can ever be scaled and used in our environment where it's much more chaotic and like Alexi said, a much bigger area, I think, there's at least potential for practitioners to learn a lot that may be able to move the needle down the road.
And are you saying that because of the environment on the ice, it might be harder to use computer vision system, whatever it is, because of all the equipment? I mean, is that what the issue is?
The equipment, the size of the skating area. I mean, I know people talk about looking at how you shoot a puck and breaking it down biomechanically, and there's certainly some value there. But how a pitcher throws a baseball over and over and over is very different from how anybody shoots, any hockey player shoots a puck, dependent on all of the constraints around them in that moment. It's going to be different. They're certainly going to have their own signature, but it's going to be very different contextually. So I think those are just the challenges to being able to analyze those things,
because it's a more complex environment too, right? Yeah, makes sense. Chris or Adam, any thoughts on future return to play?
I would say mine goes a little different in the sense that I would hope we've created enough consistency that 5 to 10 years, every team is up to par with doing the basic things right. I still hear a lot of stories about guys going through the injury process, not getting timely diagnoses, not getting access to the right doctors, teams just doing things the old school way. I feel like 5 to 10 years from now, I hope all the teams are integrating, kind of like Devan's talked about on social media, like teams are working integratively well together, that there's not silos that are competing against one another. GMs and front offices and agents are all collaborating well together. You know, we're doing what should be done in modern medicine well across the board at all levels. And we're avoiding the unnecessary surgeries, the unnecessary things that are holding guys back later in their careers and in their lives. And we're taking better care of them so they last longer.
It looks like a lack of maybe communication or politics, or is that what it is? Or I mean,
yeah, I don't know. I think it's
Devan's post, I don't know.
multifactorial, but yeah, I think there's more we can be doing to get everyone up to speed and everyone functioning well together.
Yeah, which sometimes we take for granted, but you know, I hear, for example, NFL teams, and I hear like they're not even different department. They don't collaborate well. They don't talk as effectively as they should, right? So makes sense. Adam, any thoughts on that as well? Return to play, what the future looks like.
I think everyone nailed it. Chris's answer is excellent, and as the PT of the group, I'll leave the final answer with him because that was a great one.
All right. Hey, last question I want to ask you guys is, you know, what's one profile of player you think the NHL will produce more, you know, in the next decade? You know, faster, stronger, smarter, better conditioned, and why do you think, you know, we'll produce more of those types of players in the future? It's not a non-technical question, but it's more about what you guys see in the future and the evolution of the game and the players.
Well, I think the future is almost now with, you know, you're seeing this push of these younger players challenging a lot sooner.
Mm-hmm.
Look at San Jose right now, you know, Celebrini and you know, Will Smith and those guys, they're really pushing the envelope. Whereas, so I would say probably like 5 or 6 years ago, there was just this, unless you were picked first overall, you weren't making the league. And now a lot of players are getting prepared for the pro game younger. So I think that's just going to start to shift. And I know the salary cap's going up over the next few years, but in a salary cap environment, if you can get great play out of your young entry level players, it's going to set your organization up for success.
Are you saying that you don't have to be as strong and big, and it's more like some smaller guys might, because they have more skill set, they have a chance to make it in the league as well? Or?
No, I would say that the players are just coming into the league better prepared.
Yeah. And you could say the same thing, I think, for basketball too, right? Some younger guys, you know, because of the AAU and the programs, they also, you know, they develop faster and they're more prepared, right? So interesting. Anybody else have any thoughts on, you know, the types of players we'll see more in the future?
I mean, I kind of very similar to how Adam sees it. I think the future is now, and I think what you're seeing and where my mind went to with this is the cognitive side, the intelligence of the player is allowing these guys, these young players, to process the game. The game is so fast now. The ability to process what's happening at these incredible speeds is the differentiator a lot of times, and players younger and younger are able to do that. And I think that's where it'll continue to evolve. I don't know how much physically faster we can get. Maybe we will, but I think the player's ability to cognitively handle that and process those things faster and faster is where things will progress.
But and is any kind of way we see across different sports? Does the players getting quicker and faster these days, right?
I mean, physically, there's certainly, you know, everybody's getting faster, everybody's getting, you know, stronger, etc. But again, it's at some point, it's the brain's ability to process the things that are going on in the game and the speed of the game. If your head can't do that, it doesn't matter physically what you're able to do. And that's where we're seeing these young players excel, because they can see the game in a way that 10 years ago players, with the exception of the very elite, couldn't do it.
Because also they train younger and younger, right? Right. So by the time they turn pro, like for example, the number 1 draft pick, right, from San Jose, the Sharks. His dad also was the head of performance he's still the head of performance, I think, for the Warriors, right?
Yep.
So he got trained at a very young age, right, to go to those drills, and so he developed those skills early on, I guess. Anybody else have any thoughts on the types of players we'll see in the future, Alexi or Chris?
The only thing I'd comment on is I wonder if the it'll swing back to a slightly bigger player, because I feel like the game right now is getting smaller, more skilled. You're not having the same type of physicality necessarily the league has had, decades before. I'm curious if that will swing back a little bit. And it's interesting, like all these players, you look back historically, strength training wasn't as big decades ago. Now everyone's strength training, everyone's focusing on nutrition. So it's like, where's that last edge that people are going to get? And I'm curious if that's to what Devan's talking about, if that's where people are going to start reaching. But it's interesting because, like in basketball, with all the injuries that are happening, with how fast the pace of the game's being played and how many games they're playing, I'll be curious to see what happens with hockey, because as these guys have said, you can only get so much faster physically. So
yeah, it'd be interesting. Maybe you'll go the other way with bigger guys, right, in the future, right? Interesting. Thank you, Chris. Alexi, any thoughts on that as well?
No, the only thing I was going to add was similar to what Chris said. I feel, and what everyone's kind of said, is everybody's training now. There's not a ton of secrets, that are still sort of left untapped. So it's almost create a more homogenized group of players. Everybody's in shape. There's not a huge difference between the top and the bottom from a speed or fitness standpoint. But to Devan's point, it's the way that they think the game, how they can make those plays under pressure. And then as they evolve and as they come into the league and learn how to be successful and what might have worked for them at younger ages or with different competition, now how they have to evolve their game and sort of those tricks of the trades and things they learned from veterans. I think if players have an open mind to that side of the game and can add that skill set once they get into the league, I think that's going to be a differentiating factor moving forward.
And Alexi, to that point, yeah, because great point you made about all those teams are, as far as conditioning, they're pretty much on par. They had the same abilities, but what makes some teams stand out versus other ones?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And from that time, I guess it's the preparation and the recovery. All the teams in the league are playing 3.5 games a week with plus travel. So at the end of the day, too, like, it's how you recover, and the teams that can get a leg up from a recovery standpoint using whatever different methods or modalities or products or scheduling or planning, things like that, then I think that's going to be advantageous. And ultimately the team that's fresher, the team that's healthier is probably going to have the best chance of success when all other things are equal.
So you really think the recovery aspect, the team that recovers the quickest, the one that can sustain and win in the long run?
Yeah, I think you're playing 82 games, going to go up to 84 pretty soon. The schedule is going to just keep getting more and more condensed, kind of thing, and you need to there's a lot of good players and a lot of different roles on each team and within the league, but can you bring it every night? It's not about playing 60 good games a year, but can you play 70, 75, 80, you know what I mean? And not see such a drop off on those days when you're tired or you're fighting it, kind of thing.
Would you guys, thank you, Alex, Devan, Chris, I don't know, you guys agree with that? The recovery is one of the key elements that makes a difference?
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly. Recovery and staying healthy. It's worse this year than ever because of the Olympic break, but it's the same recipe all the time. It's having your best players available to play is really what matters. And so all of these pieces of the puzzle go into it. Recovery being a huge aspect, intelligent training, schedule planning, like all of these are pieces of the pie that ultimately, we're all trying to figure out, keep our players as healthy as possible and as well recovered as possible throughout the schedule.
Yeah. And Chris and Adam, would you guys agree with that as well? Recovery is key, especially with the long season.
Yeah, for sure. Schedule density is crazy. In hockey and basketball, we're the only two sports that have a schedule as crazy as it is. Football, their schedule is, insane, but they only play once a week. You know, all the European soccer clubs and everything like that, they'll play 1 or 2 games a week and think that's a lot. You know, whereas our guys go to battle every other night. And as Alexi said, they're adding 2 more games to schedule. So, you know, the best teams that can figure out the recovery and, you know, the supplements and how to best take care of their athletes' bodies are going to be the ones who are there at the end.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Chris, would you agree? I suppose recovery is key.
Yeah, I would say recovery and depth of roster as we're going through. Like next man up mentality, unfortunately, is part of the game. So whoever has the deepest roster and can keep them healthiest the longest will do well. Yeah,
like I think Devan said, like, you know, healthy, right? No injuries, right? That's going to impact your roster, right? Obviously. So, hey guys, well, at the end of the podcast, I want to thank you for your time today. You know, it was a pleasure. So thank you for your time and good luck with the rest of the season.
Thanks, Julian.
You guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening. To access past episodes and other research, articles, and analysis of sports technology, please visit our website, theupside.us. Subscribe to the Upside newsletter and receive full access to our sports tech business letter and website. Royalty-free music is provided by ibaudio.com. The Upside podcast provides timely insights and interviews with global leaders in sports technology. Until next time, keep looking to the upside.